Hi, this is Brad. Thank you very much for attending the WebEx this afternoon. And what we're talking about today is whether it's time for Sense or not. I'm trying to give you a fairly unbiased opinion about those things. So there'll be some things that maybe the Qlik guys wouldn't say, but I will. So as we go through, we'll talk about those a little bit. Here's the agenda of the things that we're going to talk about. Qlik Sense 2.2 came out this week, so I've had some time to have a look at it, and I'll show you a couple of the new things that are in Sense in a small demo that I'm going to do at the end of what's new in Sense 2.2. Okay, once again, thank you. So let's kick off. So some people, like most of the people that are on the WebEx that I can see so far, are all QlikView customers. So I wanted to give you a quick overview of what Sense is about. I started working with Qlik in 2006, and the product was initially released back in '94 as QlikView. QlikView is still there, obviously. QlikView has been developed over that period of time. So some of the technology in the background of QlikView made it easy to do things for us, and some of it made it a little bit hard for us to do things. About 4 years ago, Qlik decided that it was time to develop a new infrastructure, if you like, that supported the Qlik associative logic and all the things that we love about QlikView. And that used to be called QlikView Next during the time when it was being developed, and it eventually became renamed as Qlik Sense, and the two products coexist now. So one of the things that I see is that there's some opportunities for some of our customers to move across to this more modern platform and give themselves the advantages that Qlik Sense will give us. So reason for the presentation is all around those things, but I wanted to go through for those of you that haven't seen Qlik that much for a couple of minutes and show you what's happening. Okay, next generation looks nice and clean. When you build things, they generally are easier to build in Qlik Sense than QlikView. I have produced a training course that takes the QlikView training and puts it into Qlik Sense training, and what I've found is that most of the time the steps to build, say, a bar chart are about a quarter of the time that it takes to build in Sense as it does to build in QlikView. So I see some really positive benefits to that front-end build. It's nice and quick and easy, and it's not as difficult as it is sometimes in QlikView, where you've got to go hunting for things quite a lot to be able to find exactly what you need. Okay, one of the important things I see inside Qlik Sense is that it's the governance factor for Qlik Sense in an enterprise organization is considerably easier. We can manage things much more easily and to a much greater extent on the back end there is in the management console than we could have ever inside QlikView. And that gives us a lot more power to do things. The second thing that I see is that the self-service side of things in people building their own visualizations that they either keep for themselves or share with other people is infinitely simpler as well. So there are a couple of the positives that I see. Okay, let's just move on a little bit. So I've talked about some of those things a little bit. The associative model, just as it was inside QlikView, is identical inside Sense. In fact, QlikView 12 was released about 2 weeks ago, and we're still testing that before we recommend it going out to all of the QlikView customers. The engine in the background is called the Qlik engine in both systems from QlikView 12 and Qlik Sense. So everything works in the back end identically. So that associative model that we love inside QlikView is identical in Qlik Sense. The visualizations are nice and easy. It's drag and drop to build things, and as you make changes, you can see what impact that has on the visualization immediately, and that makes life a lot simpler as well. there's lots of ease for sharing things that individual users might build, or collaboration. In particular, the data storytelling capability is quite powerful and allows us to take things that we've built into Qlik Sense and put them into a report that can be from this latest version, 2.2, can be sent out by PowerPoint, can be sent out into a PDF and so on. So a lot of capability there around taking the data that you're finding inside Qlik Sense and publishing it to people. And the last of those things, I guess, is that the ability to share the things that you're seeing on any kind of device. In QlikView, while it was possible, it was a little bit difficult to resize things easily for big desktop to laptop to tablet down to mobile phone. That's not the case in Sense. Everything resizes automatically in a very smart way, and I'll show you a little bit about that when I do the presentation and build something. The other thing is that because it's an enterprise-wide and enterprise-ready piece of software, you can embed the charts and objects that you're finding, say, back in your SharePoint site or onto a website or something like that. You can also build additional visualizations if you want, and extensions. So an example of that might be that you want a bullet chart, and that bullet chart doesn't exist inside Qlik Sense natively. You can go to a place where those extensions have been built by other people that are using Qlik Sense, and you can download those. It's called branch.qlik.com. But additionally, if you have the skills in-house, you can build your own extensions quite easily. So data integration on the front end. There's now a Qlik Sense API that'll go and get a RESTful, get stuff from RESTful data sources. So that makes it very easy to connect into lots of web apps. You can connect to SAP, you can connect into SQL and Excel and HTML and all sorts of places. So the integration back into source systems is nice and simple. And the governance aspects are really quite strong. Now, I noticed there's a question from somebody on some examples of better governance. We'll see how we're going in terms of the time for the presentation. If possible, I'll flash up some of the management console and we can have a look at some of that governance issue. If not, the person who's asked that and everybody in this presentation, I'll send out a PDF that outlines some of those pieces. So thanks for the question. Okay, I talked about the Qlik engine just before. That's now been consolidated so that QlikView 12 and Qlik Sense both use the Qlik engine. It allows us to connect to things dynamically rather than hierarchically, and so that allows us to make connections between data in lots of easier ways without us thinking too much about how those things will connect together. Just down on below the image here, we've got something that has product and country and region and customer. And what you can see in there is a little bit different to QlikView, so I wanted to just quickly highlight that. On the screen, you'll see that someone has selected bib shorts, and we can see some countries that have sold bib shorts. So we can see that Canada, France, Germany, United Kingdom, United States have, but Australia hasn't sold any. And in fact, those bib shorts haven't been sold into the APAC region as well. Likewise, there'd be some customers here that have purchased those, but if we were to scroll down that list, if we could, we'd see that there's some grayed out customers with the dark gray. Now, the light gray color tells us something new that we didn't see in QlikView. This means that when they've clicked on the product bib shorts, that there are things that are associated with that. And so the lighter gray thing means people that have bought bib shorts and something else together. So that can be quite a powerful addition to that associative logic that we didn't see in QlikView. And very much at ABM and certainly at Qlik, we think of QlikView and Qlik Sense as being products that will allow us to get insights that are kind of a little bit unexpected sometimes. So I guess if I'd been the sales manager here and I clicked on bib shorts, I may have been very surprised to discover that they weren't sold in Australia. It wasn't necessarily what I went looking for, but the insight appears very quickly and makes the product very powerful to give us those insights. Oops, I think I just went 2 pages. So for individuals that are using Qlik Sense, let me just jump forward a couple of pages. Actually, I just want to show this page first, and then we'll go back. The Qlik Sense product range comprises of 3 things now. There's the Qlik Sense desktop, and so I know that on the call here there are a couple of people that come from quite small companies. Qlik Sense desktop allows you to go and use the Qlik Sense product. You can use that standalone on a Windows computer. It gets all the same capabilities as the other products. You can reload it yourself when you want to. You can export things up into Qlik Sense Cloud, which I'll talk about in a sec. And you can take the Qlik View that you've built and attach it to an email, for example, and share it with someone else, and they can open it and see things. There's no limitations on the number of apps you can build or sharing of those things. So really, for a smaller company, there's some possibilities there to use Qlik Sense Desktop as your tool of choice. Now, I know the people that are on this call have already bought Qlik View, so there's some opportunities to take what you've got in Qlik View and turn it into Qlik Sense Enterprise as well. So Qlik Sense Cloud allows you to take something you build in the desktop and drop it up into the cloud. You can have it as many as 5 users, and I think there's some limitations on the volume or the size of the data that you can drop up into the cloud, but that again is completely free. You can have 5 users that share the thing that you've dropped up into the cloud. The restriction is that when you reload it and drop it up into the cloud, you can't reload it while you're up in the cloud. So you've got to bring it back down, reload it again, and drop it back up again. So if you've got one-off things that you want to send to people and share with people, then Qlik Sense Cloud makes a lot of sense. Lastly is Qlik Sense Enterprise, which is the full product that I'll continue talking about from now on. And Qlik Sense Enterprise puts the ability to do your governance and do your management and licensing and those kind of things up onto a server. All of the development work can be done directly via Qlik Sense Enterprise in browser. You don't need to have Qlik Sense Desktop at all in your organization. You can use Qlik Sense Enterprise and browser to build all of your applications, go through all the governance type issues and licensing and so on, completely in Enterprise and don't necessarily need to use desktop. People like consultants and like ABM, we tend to use desktop because we move between customers, and so we'll build things for customers in our version of desktop, and then we'll drop it up into their enterprise for them to start using from there. I think one of the things that I really like about Qlik Sense Enterprise that I haven't explored too much yet is the APIs. That allows developers to connect into Qlik Sense Enterprise to build different applications, to build different visualizations, to use a management software that will look after the users and so on. So it doesn't necessarily all have to be done inside Qlik Sense Enterprise. You can use another tool and make the connections into Qlik Sense Enterprise via the API calls, which I think is quite progressive and interesting of Qlik, the way they've done those things. So I needed to talk about those. Let's go back now to what it's like for individuals. So the associative model, talked about that, same as it is in Qlik View. Those smart visualizations allow us to visualize in lots of different ways the data that you're seeing inside Qlik Sense. The other thing from there is that those visualizations could be extended using Qlik Branch to go and grab more visualizations like the bullet chart that I mentioned earlier, and the ability, I guess, for end users to be able to drive their own content generation. Now, clearly, that could become a little complex. So when we get to the governance side of things, what we need to do is to be able to give those users particular dimensions, particular measures, and maybe particular visualizations that they can use. We don't necessarily want them to have access to every single field in the data model. So I mean, when I do the demonstration, I'll just show you quickly how you can build that, those measures that are the ones that we share with our end users. Okay, when we get to groups, the ability to collaborate and share can be centralized when we're using enterprise, and that allows us to build, let's say I'm a user inside an organization, I can build a couple of new visualizations, a new chart, a new bar chart, say a new line chart, and I think they're really good pieces. I can share those. I can, if I have the rights, I can share those things publicly with other people to visualize, and that's a very simple process for me to do, and it's a very simple process in a governance sense for that ability to be turned on or off. Now, clearly in a large organization, you're going to want to give people a little bit of training and a little bit of understanding of data before you get them building those kind of things. In the storytelling space, that ability to take what you've seen inside in Qlik Sense, turn it into a multiple page story that outlines a problem or an issue or a reporting that's needed, can be displayed directly inside Qlik Sense, or it can be exported, as I said, to a PDF or to a PowerPoint file for distribution to people. And then the last part of the group piece, I guess, that I talked about a little bit before, is that ability to use it on any kind of device, right down to a smartphone, where everything inside the Qlik Sense app will be adjusted so that it easily works inside a phone. Okay, from an enterprise perspective now across the organization, we want to be able to robustly connect to data sources, and one of the joys of Sense is that script and that scripting is all internal to Sense. You don't have to have several other products to go and grab pieces of data and manipulate them before they come into Sense. That can all be done directly inside Sense. So whether you're connecting to SAP or an online CRM system, a bit like Salesforce, the RESTful API that I mentioned earlier can go and grab stuff directly from the CRM. We can grab things from HTML web pages, and we can go and get a Hadoop query and grab data, big data from places and bring them back into our applications as well. Also, we can embed the analytics that we've produced in Sense inside other pieces. It's nice and easy to drop a particular object, for example, from Qlik Sense into your intranet pages. It's nice and easy to do those things. Again, the enterprise governance, another example, I guess, of that is Qlik Sense Enterprise comes automatically with the ability to audit which people have been to which places inside the application. It gives us the ability to see how many users have come in, which applications they've opened. We also have an audit function which will tell us for any particular user what they currently have access to. That's almost impossible in QlikView and automated and easy inside Sense. So again, just makes that governance much, much better. Okay, they're the various products that I just talked about. What I'd like to do for the next few minutes is just do a quick demo of running things inside Sense. I just need to move a few of these pieces out of the way. I'm not going to be able to see if anybody posts a question while I'm doing this, so I've just closed that piece. And this is the Qlik Sense desktop hub, if anyone hasn't seen it. It's probably got a few more apps on it than most of the other ones you've seen. I'm going to build a brand new app, and I'm going to call that 5 minutes, because hopefully it's going to take less than 5 minutes to build it. So once I've created the app, I've got the option to open it. And as my app opens, what I'd like to do is add some data. Now, the data I'm going to add is from the AdventureWorks database. So anybody that's been around data for a long time will remember that AdventureWorks database. And I'm going to just drag it in to the application. So you can see there it says drop the file to load data. And right now I'm going to just drop one table in there just to show you how that works, and then I'll add the rest of the tables in a moment. So when I release this, it will identify this Excel, and it'll tell me that it's got a series of worksheets on the Excel, including the top one, which is sales order header data, and it's got 24 columns of information in here. If I needed to, I could choose not to bring some of these things in. If I decided I didn't want the purchase order number, I can just uncheck it. If I wanted to rename one of the fields here, I can simply rename it by typing inside here. That will rename it automatically in the script, so I don't have to know how to do that in the script. I can just type in the rename information there. As it turns out, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to load it as it is. But I'm going to use this prepare data option. This is something that's new for Qlik Sense 2.2, and one of the things that it will do is allow me, or allow the system to go and look for dates. And when it finds a date, it's going to make a year and a month and a quarter and a year-month field and a few others based on the fact that it identifies this as a date. So to do that, I've got to hit the Prepare Data button. It'll take a few seconds just to look through this information and produce some stuff for me. So it's now saying it's ready to be loaded. So I'll load the data now. I had a drink while I was waiting. I hope you couldn't hear that. So now I've got the option of editing the sheet. So I'll just edit the sheet. Now I've got some options that I can build things, but what I'd just like to show you very quickly is that the top left-hand corner of Sense is the navigation. It looks a bit like a compass. And we've got some options inside here. One of the things we've got is the data load editor, the app overview. I can go back to that hub, which is where I started initially. If you click on this side over on the right, it opens each in a new window. What I'd like to do is just show you what happened in the data load editor. So I'm going to open that in a new window. And you'll see that there's an auto-generated section that has a lock against it. When I click on here, I can unlock that section. And I can see the script that it wrote. So here it is loading that table of stuff from there, which was the order header table. And it also wrote some script for me that created some fields called year and quarter and year quarter and month and so on. So it created a series of those. If it were necessary, we can add some extra things in there, like fiscal periods and so on. So for this example, I've got 5 minutes, so I better hurry along and do things. I'm going to, now that this is unlocked, I'm going to just rename this for myself. I'm going to call it sales, if I can type it, sales header. And what I'd like to do now is to drag some more data across into here and let it generate some more. So I'll simply drag the Excel across, and we'll bring the rest of the Excel in so you can see what happens. Got to save before I do that. Naughty me. And yes, it reminded me, which is good. Okay, so it's now said, hey, I've got all these other fields, tables, let's bring them all in. I've already brought sales header, so I won't. And I don't need to prepare the data this time. I just wanted to show you how that works. So I'll now load and finish. Okay, so it'll go through and it's going to create the other tables for me. Okay, so it's taken 15 seconds and it's loaded everything for me. What I will do, I'll jump out of here. Here's my sheet that I left just a little while ago. What I'd like to do is to create my first object, and I'm quite keen to see some information around the products and the categories that have been sold. So I'm going to drop a bar chart onto the screen here. I'm going to resize it a little bit so I can fit some other things on the screen in a moment. And I'd like to add a dimension and a measure. That's what it's asking for. I'm going to grab the fields. Now what I'd like to add in first is the category. No, I'll add in the product first. I can't find the product on the screen there. There's a lot of things, so I'll just start typing and it'll find product for me and I can drag it across onto the screen. So I'm going to add product as a dimension. Now what I'd like to also add is the value of the sales, and I just happen to know that they're in line total. So I'll drag line total across and add it as a measure, and I'd like to make that a sum. So now I've got a list of all of the sales by product. That's very nice, but I'd like to add a second category. Now this is something new inside Qlik Sense 2.2 as well. So I've got an alternative dimension that I can add in. I'll show you how that works when we're finished building this page. So if I add the alternative, again, I can search through here. So I'd like to add category this time as my alternative. And that'll do for now. And I'll click done, just so you can see what's happening. One of the nice things about Qlik Sense is that it puts this piece on here so that I can slide around if I've got too many fields. Obviously, I could restrict this to the top 20 or the top 100 or whatever I needed, but by default, it will give me this slider to tell me all the great things that have been sold, including hex nuts and so on. So I'd like to add a little bit more to get a bit more insight. Actually, no, I'll show you the ability to change. This is new to Qlik Sense 2.2. You can see here that I'm looking at products. This is all user able in place, so I can come in here as a user and I can decide I don't want product anymore, I want category, and it'll automatically recalculate things based on categories instead of products. Likewise, I can do some interesting things around presentation. I could decide I want to have this one come out horizontally rather than vertically, and I want to put some values on the end. It will do that for me. Notice how it does nice things like making this one million and this one thousands. And I could change colors if I wanted to as well, and play around with how the presentation came. Sense will remember the user's selections inside here, which is quite useful as well. I'm not going to make any of those changes right now, so I'll discard that. And I'll just drop this one down. Let me go back and edit, and I'll just edit and build a little bit more in here. So I'm going to build a pie chart this time. You'll see that Sense is still searching for line because that's what I typed in before. I'll just get rid of that. Go back to here. Again, I can't find pie, so I might just search for the pie chart, and there it is. I'll drag the pie chart over to here, and I'll just drop that down a little bit as well. And I think for a dimension on my pie chart, I would like to have categories. So I've got the choice here. I can click on here to find categories, or I can drag it across from the bar here. And now the measure, it would be nice to add the measure in a slightly different way. So let me just jump out of there for a moment. I'm going to add a measure. And now this will become a standardized measure that will be available to the end users when this goes up into Qlik Sense Enterprise. I'm going to create a new measure. Now my new measure is going to be, so I've just clicked on the formula here. I want to add up the line total. Let me grab it, not list price, line total. And the aggregation I'd like to use for that is sum. So I can insert that in and apply it. Now I'm going to call that sales. And if I wanted to, I can have a nice lengthy description in there, but I'll just call that sales for now. And I'll create that measure. Now that measure is sitting there. I can now drag that measure across onto here, and it will automatically be seen as a measure. Likewise, I can replace the measure that was here with this automated master item piece. So I'll replace the calculation I had before with this one. It's not going to make any difference because it's the same calculation. The joy of doing this is that if I then discover that actually that formula is wrong, I needed to multiply it by quantity or something like that, then I can make that change once in the master item, and it will work across the entire application. Okay, so I built two pieces. I think I would like to build a pivot table. Pivot tables were always a bit troublesome in Qlik View. They're a little bit easier in Qlik Sense. And with Qlik Sense 2.2, we've got the ability to export the data, which we didn't have in the last one. So I'm going to add a couple of dimensions into this one. What I'd like to have is category, subcategory, and product. So again, I'll search for things. No, I won't. Categories are too easy to find. When I drag it across, I just drag it to the right to the middle, add category. Now I need subcategory. I can't see that, so I'll search. I'll drop subcategory across. I've got the choice to replace it. I don't want to do that. I want to add it. And the last one I wanted to grab was product. So I can't see that at the moment. Let me just search. Whoops. Product, there it is. So I'll drag that across. Add product. Now the measure is nice and easy for me to get. I want this one. So I'll just drag sales across again. So now I've got my pivot table ready to go. I can flip things around in lots of weird ways. If I wanted to, I could have categories. Sorry, that was my mistake. I need to be out to activate the user features so that can happen. I'm going to build one last app and then we'll stop building. And the last one I'd like to do is now called a tree map. And in that tree map, we've got the ability to visualize in a slightly different way as well. So in the tree map, I'd like category, add category, add subcategory again. And the last one I'd like to add is product. And I'll add the measure. I'm going to add the measure a slightly different way. This time I'll click on the measure here, and the measure that I've defined in the master items will pop to the top here, so I can grab it from here as well. So there's some ability for me to now analyze sales and performance in a multitude of ways. I wanted to show you the pivot table. So for example, let me move category, probably be better. I can move category across and now I can see sales by category. I might want to expand out bib shorts for whatever reason, and so I can see what happens inside the pivot table. As I said, we can export the data now. We couldn't do that in 2.1, but 2.2 has just added that into the mix. Last thing I'd like to do is just to add a couple of filters at the top here, and one of them I wanted to add was the year. So I'm going to add year. There's a few of those because it automatically built it. What I'm looking for is the ship date and the calendar year, so I'll drag this one up to here. It's got a big ugly name, so I'm going to just change that to be year. Okay, and you can see that that visualization shows on the screen for me. And the last thing I'd like to do is put store. So I'm going to drag store across into here. And I'll click on done. So now I've got the ability to analyze things by particular years. So I might pick 2003 to see what's happening. And maybe I'm interested in, I didn't actually want store, but that'll do. Let's go for the acclaimed bicycle company and see what they've got. So they've sold a very small amount, a couple of bicycles, and they're all touring bikes and touring things. I actually meant another field to be there, but I think it's okay. The idea works pretty much the same. Whenever you see these things here, this is our ability to take a snapshot so that we can build our story. So let me just take a snapshot of that, and I'm going to take a snapshot of this one. So now that those things have been snapshotted, I can annotate that as well. So I'll just name this one as, what's the name of the store that we chose? Acclaimed Only Touring Bikes. I can't type, but that's okay as well. So in terms of building a story, I can create a brand new story, and I'm going to call it Acclaimed. This is going to be the worst story ever produced. But I can go grab my snapshots, and so I wanted to put this snapshot across, which is around the touring bikes, and this one that I didn't name, I'll put it down the bottom here. And I'm going to put a title at the top, so I'll drag the title across here and type some things into here, say expand. Sorry, I just deleted it, silly me. Title. Expand Acclaimed. Now I can do it. So there's the end of my story. Not a very exciting story, but this can now be exported as a PDF. It can be exported as a PowerPoint, or it can be viewed on screen. It's only one page, so it's a bit dull to view on screen. One of the interesting things about the storytelling mode when you're here is the ability to go back to the source and see where this information came from. So it'll allow us to go back and confirm that we've got the right information. Maybe somebody who knows Acclaim says that they have two company stores, one's for their touring and one's for their mountain bikes, and so we can take that into account when we're building our story. Okay, and then I can return back to the story if I need to. That's my 5-minute demo that took a little bit more than 5 minutes. What I wanted to do was show you that ability to change this from product to category, which I think I did. I don't want to down export. So one of the key things is that ability to change from product to category. And back again, and that ability to change. And the other that I wanted to show you from 2.2 was the dates. Okay, that will be the end of my time playing in Sense for this presentation. So I've just saved and closed everything that's happening inside here. Okay, let me minimize that. A little bit more than 5 minutes, but not too bad. So I'm back here now. So what do we see in Sense that's new? That's a little bit of the demonstration. Automatic dates. You can also have calculated fields in the script. I didn't show you that. That can be calculated without having to know any script. So for example, if in my sales table I had sales and costs in the table, I could make a new calculated field that subtracted one from the other and put a result in a gross profit or something like that. I showed you the data manager very briefly for that one piece that we, when I brought in the sales header. We looked at the alternate dimensions, the same idea for measures to change what people see. They can also play around with the graphs and the colors and those kind of things. I talked briefly about the APIs. There's a few new ones with 2.2. We've got the ability to export to PowerPoint, PDF, and Excel for our stories and charts. And then there's been a number of smaller changes. One of the ones that I particularly like is the ability to drag the width of columns inside tables, because that wasn't available to us previously. Okay, so that's a bit of what's new. There's some examples. This PowerPoint will come out to you guys after the presentation, so you'll be able to see those kind of screenshots as well. There's how to do the calculated field. That's how to add the alternative that I did. And there's a little bit more around those things, but I think I've talked about 2.2 about enough now. All right, so if you want to change to Sense, what are some of the good reasons to do that? The key one that I see is that Qlik's development and energy is going more into Sense now than it is into QlikView. QlikView is still supported. There was an update with QlikView 12 just a few weeks ago. There was also an update to end printing, which only works with QlikView in the last week. And the API call that I talked about, the RESTful API, that connector, it works with both QlikView and Qlik Sense. The next thing that I think is important to understand is that there is no license cost for the server components in Qlik Sense. So if you have 10 licenses, they're called tokens in Sense. If you have 10 tokens, you can have 3 servers if that's what you want, and you can share the load between those servers. There is no additional cost, so it makes growing the amount of information you're getting out of Qlik Sense very economical in terms of licenses. The next one that I really like is responsive design. That means if I build something, it will resize itself to suit smaller screens. And I did say that I would show that. So just one sec. If I resize this screen, you'll see that things resize with me. More values appear and disappear as we move in. Things will resize, and at a certain point, probably over about here, it will start to resize itself as though it were going onto a phone or a small tablet or something like that. So that happens automatically, and so that layout is automatically changed to suit the smaller screen size. We'll make it smaller still, see how we go. There we go. So everything's resizing for us. Okay. Storytelling. I did a very, very, very brief demo of storytelling. I find that being very powerful and being used by our current Qlik Sense users quite a lot. And then we talked about the enterprise capability and the governance capability of Qlik Sense Enterprise. It's really much easier and more powerful in the way that you can control what people see, what people don't see, give people capabilities and abilities to do things like build their own objects or not. They're the things I see as being very powerful. I'll just turn the questions back on again, just in case some more have come through. Somebody's asked about the item placement. In honesty, no. The items need to be placed inside the grid as it is now so that the responsive design will work the way we want it to. I suspect that will become finer over time, but right now, no, there's no option to make that grid size smaller. There was one question that just came through. All right, so not changing. If you have lots of very complicated QlikView apps that have lots of conditional viewing things, and by that I mean when you click on a button at the top of the page, a certain number of objects appear and a certain other number of objects disappear. When you click on 2015, suddenly everything, a different set of objects appear. Those kind of complicated things that we can do in QlikView, which is what Qlik would term guided analytics. Those pieces are not available inside Qlik Sense. They may well be shortly, but they're not available at this time. So if you have lots of applications like that, the options if you want to go to Qlik Sense are to not go to Qlik Sense or to rebuild those apps to behave quite differently and perhaps chop them down into smaller applications rather than the larger app you have with lots of conditional things happening. The second one is that if you're using end printing, and I know that some of the people on this call are, end printing is not available for Qlik Sense, at least until the middle of this year. That's when we're led to believe that it will be on the roadmap. And so until that time, if you're using end printing, stay with QlikView. If you have very large and complex tables in your QlikView apps, maybe you've got 12 columns of pieces of information in your QlikView app, it's probably a little bit harder to view that on the screen inside Sense. It's kind of line ball as to whether it's better or worse. I think at the moment that QlikView does a slightly better job with those very large, complex tables. And so I'd recommend, at least for the time being, that you stay with QlikView. Likewise, if you're using a lot of mini charts in your apps, spark lines and those kinds of things, if you're using those, I wouldn't recommend moving across to Sense because they're not available at the moment. And if storytelling and that end user ability to create their own objects is not something that you need at this time, essentially you're a guided analytics operation, you produce information and you share it with people, and that's what you want and that's what you need, then QlikView will do the job for you very easily, and you might not necessarily need to go across to Sense for the time being. So they're the reasons that I can see for staying and not staying. There's also a cost implication, I guess, in terms of the time it takes, and we'll have a quick look at that on the next screen. Moving to Sense, in terms of script, it can be done easily. Essentially, the script is identical. There's one or two security-related things that aren't allowed in Sense, and we use a slightly different structure for how to connect to folders and areas like an ODBC connection that need to be changed, but that's a couple of minutes work per script. It's not complicated at all. However, the front-end objects, the visualization engine inside Sense is different to the one inside QlikView, and so there needs to be some effort to rebuild the objects that you would see. It's not hard because, as you saw in my so-called 5-minute demonstration, building a chart, building something like that is nice and simple. So I don't see that as a particularly onerous cost. I think it's more the use case that you have for either QlikView or Qlik Sense is guiding you as to whether you change or stay. The good news about moving is that there is no cost implication to our clients. The licenses move across into QlikView, from QlikView into Qlik Sense without any cost implications to you, and so that makes life a little bit simple. As I said, the benefit after that is that if you need to have a second server or a third server and cluster them together because what you're doing is getting bigger and there are more people using it, there's no cost implication in Sense, whereas there is inside QlikView. All right, I'm getting towards the end of the presentation as I've prepared it. We've got about 10 minutes to go, so I was hoping that there might be one or two more questions that would appear in the chat window at the moment. Okay, and I do have one. It's quite a long one, so let me just read through it for 1 sec. Okay, so I'll just read the question to you, and then I'll make some comments. Would you agree that Qlik Sense is designed for a more sophisticated end user to create their own apps, as opposed to QlikView that is designed for well-thought-out apps to be developed by subject matter experts and used by non-tech savvy end users? I think that's a reasonable conclusion of the differences. However, from the Qlik Sense side, there's no requirement for end users to be able to build their own pieces. You don't need to have that capability turned on for anyone, and you can still have your subject matter experts build and distribute the applications just as you would with QlikView. The thing with Sense is it gives you that ability to have a small audience of, I kind of think of them as departmental business analysts who have that ability to then build further. So an example, I guess, in a hospital might be that you've got people in different parts of the hospital that are subject matter experts for their part, where they may need to build something that's not of interest to the centralized team. So I'm trying to think of an example. I guess there may be some people in HR that will want to see very different reporting to somebody in the emergency department perhaps, and there may be an analyst in each of those areas that can take data that's provided and build something extra. And that ability is much easier in Sense, but there's no requirement for that at all. Okay, I've just got one more question that I've seen, and this one relates to the end date for QlikView. My understanding is that there is no end date for QlikView. That's what we've been consistently told for nearly 2 years. If I were to bet on something, I'd say that there is an end date that will be exposed somewhere in the next several years, but the last I heard was that there was an assurance going out for at least 3 or 4 more years that QlikView would be a product. But, I don't hold me to that. I can't hold anybody that tells me that either to that date. I'm personally finding Sense more robust from a technical point of view as well. And so, from a technical point of view, I see less issues around memory management, less issues around reloads. It just seems to work much more in a modern sense than the way QlikView is held together in the back end, perhaps. Question, how do we share Qlik Sense apps with the end user? If you're just using Qlik Desktop, you can just take the Qlik Sense app, which is called a QVF, and you can pick it up and drop it on a memory stick or email it or put it in a shared folder, and the other person will be able to open it. If you're up on Qlik Sense Enterprise, you develop things called streams, and there's a stream for each user. Now, I've got a couple of minutes left, so I might just see if I can get I'll just drop this over on the other side of the screen for a moment. I'll just get the Sense server in my office up and running. I'm just logging into it, so I'll leave that private while I do that. Okay, so here's my internal Sense server. These are the things that I'm working on at the moment. You'll see that I've defaulted into something called My Work. So the My Work area are the things that I'm just doing some things around at the moment. When I'm ready to, I can have the administrator of the site, which happens to be me as well, publish them. When they're published, they end up into something called streams. So in this case, we've got an ABM internal stream, which is some stuff around sales and profitability, which I am not showing. There's some demo stream. There's an everyone stream that has things that are available to everyone in the office here. There's some monitoring apps, and there's some proof of concept apps. So I'll just show the demos and monitoring. If I need to share one of those, I can't do it from the developer point of view. I need to get an admin to do that for me. So that's part of that enterprise governance piece is allowed, that allows us to control what happens inside there. So I can say I'm ready for the Automotive 2 to be updated and pushed over the top of Automotive 1 in demos, and then as an admin, someone can do that for me. Okay, let me have a look. So I guess one comment was around empowering the end users. Yes, I think it does if you let them. You don't have to let them, but if you let certain sets of end users be empowered, then definitely they can take an app drop it into my work. Let me show you what I mean by that. So if I take this application here, I can duplicate it and then share it with myself, and it'll end up in my work area where I can go and make some changes to it and then have the admin develop it if I've got that power. Someone said that it feels like Qlik Sense is limited to more generic apps due to the lower feature set. Let me just jump back to my Qlik desktop. I just wanted to show you my ability to build objects. When you get Qlik Sense, you get about 10 objects. There is no dumbbell plot, there's no double bar chart, there's no ability to create things in D3, there's no zoomable circles, there's no cross-selling, there's no compare period, there's no chord diagram, and so on. Down this page, there's a number of things that are just not available. So whilst when it ships to you as a standard piece, I think there's a lower feature set. The ability to extend the product means that I don't think that's necessarily the case moving forward. As I mentioned it very briefly, there's something called branch.qlik.com, and branch.qlik.com allows people who've developed an extension to share it with people. And so I've taken some of those extensions and I use them quite extensively in pieces that I've got. Let me see if I've got one here. These are some D3, which is a data visualization engine. These are some D3 objects that aren't necessarily shipped directly inside Qlik Sense, that we can go and play with. I can't remember what this one's like. There's a radial chart, for example. There's nothing like that in QlikView, and I don't know how often I'd ever use it apart from sports, but there's lots of interesting other objects that you can build. I'm just coming up to the end of the hour now. I think I've answered all the questions. From here, the recording will be available if you need it. Just let Claire know if you need it. We'll share that with people that didn't make it to the presentation today. And the PowerPoint that I've used will be sent by Claire out to you guys in the next, probably early next week, I suspect. It might be this afternoon, not sure. Okay, thank you very much for attending. Thank you for the number of questions. And I really enjoyed being able to present Qlik Sense and the possibilities of staying or moving from QlikView to Qlik Sense. Thank you.